Tonight on CBC Vancouver News.
It's always concerning when something like this happens.
Violent carjacking, a teen hauled out of a vehicle and attacked. Also,
I heard a loud bang and then the largest bowl exploded.
Why did a glass mixing bowl suddenly blow up in a Victoria woman's kitchen? And
we think all these races should be stopped until people can determine whether there's any way they can be made safe.
a Vancouver group calls for chuck wagon races to be suspended after 6 horses die at the Calgary Stampede.
This is CBC Vancouver News.
Good evening. We begin with breaking news. A 21-year-old man has died of rabies after coming into contact with a bat.
CBC's Mira Baines is live tonight at St. Paul's Hospital in Vancouver. Mira, just how rare is this?
Well, this case is considered very rare and very serious. This is the second fatal case of rabies since 1924 in British Columbia. The last case here in BC was back in 2003. This 21-year-old man died here at St. Paul's Hospital on Saturday. BC health authorities are confirming that. BC's chief medical health officer has confirmed that he did die from rabies. It causes paralysis of the throat muscles. He came into contact with a bat in mid-May on Vancouver Island, according to health authorities, and started showing symptoms 6 weeks later. People who come into contact with bats are being told to wash themselves thoroughly, as well as get medical help after any sort of contact. And they're also reminding people that bats are the only carriers of rabies in British Columbia. So this is considered a very rare case, but these infections are very serious. They infect the brain and nervous system, and if it's not caught in time, not treated in time, rabies can be fatal, as it was in this case. And we're hoping to get more details on this story for you later. Mike, Anita?
Mira Baines live outside St. Paul's Hospital tonight. Thanks, Mira.
A violent carjacking in Burnaby early this morning has left a teenager hurt.
CBC Vancouver News at 11 host Dan Burrard is live now from the scene at Cardston Court. Dan, take us through what happened.
Anita, Mike, it was around midnight, right near where that white van is behind me, right near Keswick Park, where police found a 19-year-old man who had been stabbed. He was with another friend. Thankfully, that young man was not hurt. Now, the victim is expected to live. Mounties say the pair got into some kind of fight with another group around midnight. That group, after the attack, then took off in the victim's vehicle. It was later found. Here's what RCMP have to say.
Believe it to be targeted, so I would tell the public that there is no extra risk because of this incident. It's going to happen here or there. It was at midnight, so I understand that there's a school there, but it was late at night. However, it's targeted, believed to be targeted, and that means we can be a little bit relaxed as a public.
Now, the victim's car, which was later found, as I said, is a white 2004 Mazda 3. You can see a stock image of it there. The suspects were driving a dark SUV. Anyone who saw the white Mazda 3 or the dark SUV is asked to call police if they were around this area. And, of course, police will be looking for dash cam footage and surveillance video. Anita, Mike?
All right, Dan Burrard live in Burnaby tonight. Thanks.
The search is on tonight for a man who allegedly assaulted a woman near Simon Fraser University. The 19-year-old woman was walking on a trail toward Burnaby Mountain Park. She says the man started following her and trying to engage in conversation. Police say at one point the man grabbed her hand, but she pulled away and ran to a parking lot. The man then followed her and tried to talk to her again before leaving in a car described as a gray or black 4-door Acura. Anyone with information is asked to contact police.
A Victoria woman says she is lucky she wasn't hurt after a brand new glass mixing bowl exploded right on her counter.
Hundreds of sharp pieces went flying across the room, and as Liam Britton explains, it's a surprisingly common occurrence.
I heard a loud bang, and then the largest bowl exploded.
Marina Hill wanted a new set of mixing bowls for her kitchen, but what she got was a war zone.
Pieces of glass were flying everywhere, and I mean everywhere. I literally put my hands up in front of my face to shield myself from the glass.
Hill had just returned from Home Outfitters, where she purchased the set of Martha Stewart mixing bowls. She said they were laid out on the counter waiting to be washed when suddenly one bowl violently shattered for no apparent reason.
It didn't just go off once. Then it continued popping and spraying glass for about another 10 or 15 minutes. Like, I left the room. I was just scared to death.
Hill took the remains back to Home Outfitters for a replacement, but the store, which is being liquidated, refused, adding that all sales were final. Online reviews and social media posts have complained about glass products shattering unexpectedly.
Glass shattering randomly is a clear problem, but finding out why it shatters takes a little expertise.
Benjamin Kicker blows glass on Granville Island. He says it requires precise formulations and crafting.
Could have been an impurity in the glass, could have been a disruption in the production cycle. Something happened to strain that piece and to cause that strain to release apparently quite violently.
Over the past 5 years, Health Canada has recorded 71 injuries from shattering glass dishware, where heat was not a factor. Retailers are required to report every incident, but lawyer David Klein says that might not be happening as it should.
Well, clearly a bowl should not be exploding. It's not fit for its intended purpose if it explodes. British Columbia's Sale of Goods Act is actually quite clear. Anyone who sells a product for retail purposes warranties that it is fit for its intended purpose. The store should clearly be refunding the money.
A Martha Stewart rep did not answer our questions, while a spokesperson for Hudson's Bay Company, which owns Home Outfitters, said they would try and make things right with Hill. She wants these bowls pulled from store shelves for good.
If I was standing at my sink, like, the glass would have just flew right at me, in my face, whatever, right? It was, it could have been very dangerous.
Hill says if she buys glass bowls again, she'll do a little research first to get a little transparency. Liam Britton, CBC News, Vancouver.
Police say a man is now in custody in connection with a homicide in Surrey. Officers were called to a home on 105 Avenue back in February. They found an unconscious 68-year-old man. He later died of his injuries. The victim has been identified as T. Bohr. 26-year-old P. Lee Pye has been charged with second-degree murder. Police aren't saying what the motive was or how the two men were connected.
Proposed new regulations for natural health products are being questioned tonight.
Health Canada is considering requirements that would require products like herbal medicines and vitamins to have the same level of scientific scrutiny as non-prescription drugs.
As Deborah Goebel reports, the plan is getting pushback from the federal NDP's health critic.
It's a $12 billion a year business in Canada, with 76% of us using some form of natural healthcare products. More than 4 years ago, Health Canada proposed changing regulations on those products, everything from traditional Chinese medicine to vitamins to over-the-counter drugs. It has, it says, several concerns relating to the current system. Changes Dr. Bernie Garrett of the UBC School of Medicine believes are long overdue.
There are some serious problems with the state of regulation as it stands at the moment, and things aren't as safe as we'd like them to be.
But even though no changes have been made yet, the federal NDP health critic is calling the process very opaque and secretive.
This has caused great consternation and concern, both among patients, among practitioners, and industry in Canada, as they see that these changes may lead to consumers having far less choice over the products that they wish to access.
A petition developed by the Health Action Network Society, a Vancouver charity with a history of spreading anti-vaccination claims, as well as practitioners of Chinese medicine, claims the stricter regulations disrespect the health traditions of a multicultural society.
Medicines that have cultural relevance and treatments whose outcomes are uniquely measured, for example, homeopathy or herbal medicine, may no longer be permitted to make claims based on current evidence frameworks.
But not everyone agrees.
We consume it by hearsay, so therefore I think it should be regulated. Then at least there's some control of.
I think the technician or whoever give out the herbs should be regulated.
Why wouldn't we want to regulate these in the same way that we regulate pharmaceuticals at the moment?
For now, health claims associated with some alternative treatments can be approved by Ottawa if they're supported by hundreds of years of traditional knowledge. But critics say if the rules change, costly clinical trials may become out of reach for manufacturers unable to patent their products.
It will result in industry having to spend a lot of money and losing business to other industry actors outside of the country.
No date has been set as to when these new Health Canada regulations might come into effect. Deborah Goebel, CBC News, Vancouver.
The Vancouver Humane Society is calling the deaths of 6 horses at the Calgary Stampede a national disgrace. 3 horses had to be euthanized during the final night of the chuck wagon races yesterday. The horses received medical treatment after going down, but on-site veterinarians weren't able to save them. 3 horses had already been put down in chuck wagon races earlier in the 10-day event.
The Calgary Stampede is being marketed as an iconic Canadian event, both nationally and internationally. And now everyone's looking at this event as the place where all these horses die needlessly. It's an absolute disgrace to Canada.
The group is asking for chuck wagon races to be suspended until they can be made safer. 102 animals have died in Stampede events since 1986. Organizers are promising a thorough review of the deaths. More on this story later in the newscast.
Calls tonight for the federal government to relax rules on how much Chinook salmon they can catch this season. A group of Victoria anglers and business people staged a floating protest in Victoria's Inner Harbour and Ogden Point. The group says DFO should ease this season's fishing restrictions because the low run that was predicted hasn't materialized. They say jobs and businesses are at stake because of misinformation coming from Fisheries and Oceans Canada.
Then when a federal ministry changes the game, they lose their deposits and they lose their opportunities to fish. And it's devastating to those small businesses.
The group says more than enough spring and summer Chinook are up to 50,000 are expected to return to the Fraser River this summer.
And Brett Satterholm joins us now for the first look at the weather. Quite the gorgeous day out there, very warm.
Yes, I mean, I am not going to be complaining. In fact, I don't know if you can hear this behind me, but it is Monday. So that means that we've got our amazing free dance lessons that are going on just outside of our studio here at the Queen Elizabeth Theatre. It's putting in the mood. People are dancing, people are feeling good and happy. And I think you're going to continue to feel that way if you like the beautiful weather that we had today, because quite honestly, it is going to be repeating for the next 24 hours. Lather, rinse, repeat. Temperatures right now in Vancouver, right around where they should be. We're looking at anywhere between 23, 24 degrees. It is beautiful. There are barely any clouds in the sky right now. It feels very much summer-like. And as we go throughout the overnight period, it's not going to get all that cold. We're only going to be looking at temperatures dropping down to 15 degrees. It's been pretty calm over here. It is worth mentioning that over on Vancouver Island, we actually had quite a few strikes of lightning earlier on today. There were a couple of thunderstorms that popped up right around Nanaimo, but we were largely dry. Unlike I know parts of us on Sunday, we weren't maybe so lucky there. Here are those temperatures that I mentioned for the overnight period, really cooling down maybe a little bit more to New West, maybe down to about 13 degrees or so. But by the time we get to tomorrow, expect these temperatures to be very similar to what we experienced today. Very comfortable in the low to mid 20s. And again, I'm thinking we're going to be getting a good amount of sunshine and maybe only a few clouds here and there. But heads up, come Wednesday, there's going to be a lot more rain in the forecast. So you're going to have to stay tuned to find out more about that.
Thanks very much, Brett.
You're welcome.
Well, it has grown to become one of the busiest bike lanes in the world. The Burrard Bridge bike lane marked its 10th birthday this past weekend.
When it opened, many thought the project was doomed to fail, but as our John Hernandez reports, some of those critics have now changed their tune.
With each trip over the Burrard Street Bridge bike lane, this meter counts up. Since January, there's been more than 700,000 riders. That's on pace for a record-breaking year. Most aren't afraid to sing its praises.
It's wide enough and there's lane on both sides, so it's absolutely superb. I love it.
And the views that you get looking over the harbour, it's a really nice way to start and finish your ride.
But it was a rocky start for what's become a community cornerstone. For years, cyclists crossing this bridge rode on the sidewalk, sometimes colliding with pedestrians.
The bridge was certainly never intended or set up for people to cycle over it.
Former Vancouver Press Secretary Kevin Quinlan recalls when the city first experimented with a makeshift bike lane in 1996.
This is stupid. There are 2 cyclists and 9 million cars, and they got a whole lane.
The pilot was canceled just days later due to chaos and confusion on the roads. It wasn't until 2009 that a new government, led by Gregor Robertson, would try again, this time with a separated bike path taking up a lane of traffic. There was no shortage of critics.
In this case, the wrong decision was made today.
It was going to be disaster. It was going to be, no one would ever ride it. You know, Vancouver, it rains too much. When it went in, and that first week, and the predictions of chaos and congestion just did not materialize, a lot of that opposition subsided pretty quickly.
Old opponents have changed their tune. The bike lane has since doubled in size. It's now the busiest bike lane in North America.
None of us had a crystal ball to predict the popularity of cycling if you made it safe for people.
An evolution that hasn't gone unnoticed by riders.
It's funny, it's a little noise from a small population of the community, and you don't see the same problems that they were complaining about in the first place.
And the success of Burrard is really what enabled the city to go a lot farther and build out a network from east to west, whether it was Point Grey Road or Union Adenac Street. If Burrard hadn't worked, none of those things would have happened.
Now more than 1 million cyclists speed down this path every year. John Hernandez, CBC News, Vancouver.
John, looking good on the bike there.
Very good. Yeah, I remember when it opened 10 years ago, a colleague of mine said when he wanted to go to his quiet place, he would go to the bike lane on the Burrard Street Bridge.
And now not so much.
It didn't materialize, did it? Busy, busy place.
Well, you can watch all of our stories online. This newscast is streaming live and on demand on our free mobile app, CBC Gem. That's if you are in Canada.
Yeah, it's also available outside the country. Just follow CBC Vancouver on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram. Well, bumped from a flight, lost luggage. Coming up, the new rules to protect Canadian airline passengers. Stay with us.
Well, a woman who saves orphan raccoons wants you to seem as more than just troublesome nuisance, and that they are actually quite important to the ecosystem.
This summer, her team has nearly 70 babies, and here's what a day at raccoon rehab looks like.
I started rehabbing raccoons about 7 years ago, or maybe a little bit less. I was volunteering with the WRSOS hotline. It's a hotline in the province that answers questions about orphaned and injured animals, and they will take people's calls. It's a voluntary organization. And I started answering the hotline, and I was picking up orphaned and injured animals, and I was taking them to Jan Shattuck. She was the rehabber here. So I helped her a little bit with the animals. And a few years ago, she said, maybe you should take the raccoons. You could do the raccoons. Or the skunks. I thought my neighbors would rather have raccoons living next door. The funny thing is, or it's curious to me, that people will shoot the mothers, drown the mothers, relocate the mothers, and then once they find out they are mothers and they have a litter, they feel bad and they want me to take them. Would it not just be better to live with them and let them move on? They are important to the ecosystem. They eat a tremendous number of rodents and bugs. They eat pigeons' eggs and pigeons themselves. So they're performing a service, and the people who are shooting them generally don't like to have a lot of mice around, or rats or gophers. Working with the individual animal is fascinating. You get up every morning and you prepare the bottles, which is not so much fun, and all the washing that goes with it and prepping. But once you're sitting with that little animal and it trusts you so much and it is comfortable and you know that you're giving it a second chance, that's really important. And I think that's why I have a lot of wonderful volunteers. They love the animals. They're willing to put in the hard work. They sign up for shifts. They're here 2 or 3 hours, sometimes 5 or 6 hours a week. And they love feeding the bottles and watching them develop, and they're fascinating. They're so smart. They're able to get in and out of cages if I don't keep them locked, and they can figure things out. They're really special little animals.
And not afraid of people, at least those ones.
No, I'm not sure I would be able to hold them like that.
Close and cuddly with them?
No,
Maybe
no
not.
thanks.
No. Okay, we're going to have more on that new airline passenger Bill of Rights in just a few moments. Stay with us. Well, new rules for air travelers in Canada began today.
As of today, if you have lost or damaged baggage, or if you have overbooking situation, let's say you're on a flight later today and for some reason it is overbooked and there are people who are denied boarding, you will be entitled to your financial compensation immediately.
As you heard the minister say, the new passenger Bill of Rights outlines compensation for passengers who get bumped from a flight, lose their luggage, or get stuck on the tarmac waiting.
But critics say it doesn't go far enough. The CBC's Tanya Fletcher breaks down what travelers can expect.
It's frustrating. It's really frustrating.
Flight delays are nothing new for travelers. At Vancouver International Airport this weekend, that anger directed at Flair Airlines. One of its planes had a mechanical issue, leading to significant delays in Edmonton and Toronto, too.
It's like 40 minutes before boarding. They said it was delayed by 12 hours.
An all-too-common complaint. This month alone, Swoop canceled 30 flights, mainly due to maintenance problems, and Sunwing passengers have filed 48 complaints since May 1st over flight cancellations. But up until now, passengers would rarely see compensation. They'd have to dig through the airline's own rules and then make a formal complaint to the Canadian Transportation Agency.
It's a very hollow and very expensive and time-consuming and awkward process right now.
This consumer advocate is optimistic the passenger Bill of Rights will help.
Well, there'll be a lot of improvements. There will be compensation for delays and cancellations.
In those cases, up to $1,000 if it's deemed to be within the airline's control. For lost luggage, up to $2,100 in compensation and up to $2,400 if you're bumped from a flight. But one of the most outspoken skeptics in the industry calls the new regulations deceptive.
Canadian passengers are being duped by the government.
He claims the new policies give too much leeway to airlines, like allowing for tarmac delays of nearly 4 hours and not forcing airlines to compensate for cancellations due to weather. He'd rather see Canada follow Europe's model.
In Europe, if you show up at the airport for your flight with your travel documents, with your confirmed booking on time, and for whatever reason you don't get on the plane, you get compensation.
He's joined the legal fight challenging these regulations. The International Air Transport Association, which represents airlines, is taking the government to court. And until there's a ruling, Canada's major airlines all say they will comply with the new rules. Tanya Fletcher, CBC News, Vancouver.
2 teenagers who went missing in Ontario's Algonquin Park have been found alive and well 4 days after getting lost in the wilderness.
Police say the girls' camping experience and warm summer weather helped them make it through the weekend. The CBC's Leisha Shing has the latest from the park.
Ontario Provincial Police say the girls were found late this morning. 16-year-olds Maya Murata and Marta Malik from Kitchener, Ontario. That's about an hour from Toronto. They were less than 2 kilometers from where they were last seen in the west end of Algonquin Park 4 days ago, where they were hiking on a trail. Police say they simply got lost in the woods. They were brought back to an OPP command post by plane. Police say they're in good condition.
If it was somebody who had no camping experience, if this was colder time of year, say late fall, then it would be a much more serious situation. But with the way the weather has been, the fact that the girls were out there, they were prepared to be camping in the first place, maybe not for as long as they ended up out there, but they were prepared to be camping. They had some warmer clothing for the night times. They were prepared to be out there. So I think that probably made all the difference in the world.
The girls were part of the Polish Scouting Association in Canada. They were out on a 6-day hiking and camping trip. Police say they had a tent, some other equipment as well, and supplies to last them 1 or 2 days. They were with a group that split off into smaller groups and were supposed to meet with everyone a day later, but they never showed up. And just to give you some context, Algonquin Park is huge. It's much bigger than the province of PEI, so police say there was a massive effort involved in finding these girls, including helicopters, planes, as well as ground search crews.
Our searchers have covered a lot of territory, and not only on foot, but we had, of course, an OPP helicopter in the air, Ministry of Natural Resources and Forests, so that we have covered a lot of territory. But just it took one of our OPP canine dogs, got onto a scent, and located the girls.
The teens are now reunited with their parents. Needless to say, the situation could have turned out a lot differently. So police, their parents, as well as the girls are all relieved tonight. Lisa Sheng, CBC News, Algonquin Provincial Park, Ontario.
A Vancouver group calls for change as a 6th horse dies at the Calgary Stampede. What the Humane Society is asking for coming up. Here are some of the stories we're following tonight on CBC Vancouver News.
A 21-year-old man has died of rabies after coming into contact with a bat. The encounter happened in May on Vancouver Island, and the man died at St. Paul's Hospital this weekend. Health officials say this is extremely rare and serious, but if you do come into contact with a bat, you need to see a doctor right away.
This led to the victim being stabbed and the vehicle that the victim was traveling in being stolen by the group.
A violent carjacking in Burnaby has left one teen hurt. Witnesses say he was hauled out of the car and attacked. Police say a group of men left the scene with the vehicle the 19-year-old was traveling in.
Pieces of glass were flying everywhere. And I mean everywhere. I literally put my hands up in front of my face to shield myself from the glass.
The Victoria woman says she's lucky she wasn't hurt when a brand new glass mixing bowl violently shattered in her home, seemingly for no reason. Health Canada says there have been 126 documented cases of glass dishes shattering unexpectedly. The woman wants the mixing bowls to be recalled.
There are calls tonight to put an end to chuck wagon racing at the Calgary Stampede.
They come after 3 more horses were put down over the weekend for a total of 6 at this year's Stampede. As you'll hear from Carolyn Dunn, the calls for change continue to grow louder.
Chance Bensmiller and Ross Knight coming to the finish line.
That's the end of Heat 8 on the final day of the Stampede Chuck Wagon races. What you won't see on the CBC Sports broadcast is the crash that ended up with 3 dead horses.
There was an issue in heat number 8 down the back stretch, and we're not going to show it to you.
CBC says the call to cut the crash footage from the broadcast came at the request of Stampede organizers. CBC Sports says its executive producer agreed out of sensitivity to edit out footage of the tragic accident so that viewers wouldn't be seeing what happened on the track. CBC Sports says it stands by that decision. The sanitization of images of chuck wagon incidents comes amid growing calls for the races to be cancelled. There were major changes to chuck wagon races back in 1986 after 11 horses were killed in this shocking crash.
We've got trouble. Just things get tight in the turn.
And to this day, the Stampede continues to add safety improvements and oversight. But the chucks still account for the most animal deaths at the Stampede.
We fundamentally oppose these high-risk rodeo events because despite the safety measures that Stampede has put in place, it still continues to happen.
The chair of the Independent Chuck Wagon Safety Commission says he trusts the Stampede to make things as safe as possible for the horses.
There are 20,000 people in the grandstand every evening who are enjoying the show. But moving forward, I think the Stampede will continue to act in the best interests of the sport and the horses.
The Stampede says it will launch a thorough review of its practices around chuck wagon racing, a mainstay of the event since 1923.
I think we're looking at, what can we learn, but very, very focused on the care of animals throughout that process.
But for now, at least, there are no plans to suspend the popular races. Carolyn Dunn, CBC News, Calgary.
Some rather ominous-looking dark clouds over the North Shore Mountains right now, but sunny elsewhere. Pretty nice Monday night at 6:32. Another decent day expected tomorrow on the South Coast, but Brett says the rain is on the way. His forecast is next. Well, the BC SPCA is caring for 9 emaciated cats found in trapped storage bins on a vacant property in Prince George. Cats were found by a passerby who heard them meowing and took them to a vet. They were starving and their fur was matted with feces and urine. There are 2 kittens and 7 adult cats in total. They were trapped in the bins, which had air holes punched in the lids for several days without food and water. It's not clear who put the animals there. BC SPCA asking anyone who might know to give them a call.
Very sad. Here in Vancouver, trappers had their hands full trying to catch that elusive otter from earlier this year.
Yes, in Chicago, they've got a similar situation on their hands, only this critter is much larger and potentially more dangerous.
It's been a good conversation piece, but I really hope they just are able to deal with it in a humane manner, and the alligator gets to stay alive and live a happy life.
An alligator has been on the loose for over a week now.
The local park where it was spotted has been completely closed off, but it's still attracting quite a crowd. Experts from Florida have been called in to help catch the gator. Police believe it was probably dumped by its owner after it got a little too big.
Well, Brett's back.
And I brought the nice weather this time.
Yes.
You're happy?
Clouds are out there.
You know we're happy.
I know you'd be happy. Yeah, it's going to be much the same, I think. It's truly now feeling more of a traditional summertime feel. It's not hot. I wouldn't say we have to go that far yet, but we do have some more rain in the forecast. And I did want to mention that for everyone. But let's take a look back at how the morning started here. I think it was a pretty nice one. I definitely noticed it felt a lot warmer first thing in the morning than I was kind of expecting. Beautiful sunrise there again, as always, looking up over the North Shore Mountains. It never disappoints, does it? It really is just such a beautiful view. Now, here's an interesting story for you. I often will talk about how some places in the country are warmer than others. It kind of just makes for good storytelling, right? Let's look at Victoria. We often use them as a reference point, especially in the winter time when they are so much warmer than, say, parts of eastern Canada. But yesterday, they weren't actually the warmest. They got up to 20.6, but you may be wondering, well, where was it warmer in the country? Yes, the easy answer is that much of eastern Canada was, but are you going to believe it when I show you that it was up here? This is alert Nunavut. This was 21 degrees on Sunday. This is the northernmost populated settlement in the entire world. 800 kilometers from the North Pole, kilometers rather, and it was still warmer than Victoria. That's pretty exciting, right? Anyways, closer to home, we do have some rain coming. I wanted to mention it is going to be coming from the Gulf of Alaska, so there's a little bit more of that Arctic tie. This is going to be bringing widespread rain to the north and central coast, including Haida Gwaii, largely tomorrow, before it eventually makes its way all across Vancouver Island and into the lower mainland by Wednesday. So any plans that you may have on Wednesday, that is definitely going to be the wettest day of the week. We are getting some significant accumulation here. I wanted to show you that even a place like Haida Gwaii I mentioned, their fire danger rating is quite high. Could be getting over 20 millimeters of rain. And down here in the lower mainland, we are going to be comfortably in that 10 to 20 range. And you can see here our fire danger rating is slowly creeping up again. This just happens. It gets drier over a period of time, but it will be going down again by midweek, no doubt about it. In terms of what the rest of the week is looking like, well, I mean, aside from Wednesday with those showers coming in afterwards, I don't want to jinx it, but I think we may be into a pretty good stretch of pretty nice and pretty seasonal weather. Temperatures right where they should be, maybe even a little bit warmer than that, but there is going to be a nice mixture of sun and cloud to go with it. So personally, I'm really excited by that.
Okay.
Sounds great.
You too?
You excited?
You really changed your tune. Now you're all into the sunny weather.
I'll take whatever the world decides to give us. Try to be optimistic as much as possible.
So you like anything that we get?
Anything, exactly.
All right. Well, for Francophones, yesterday, July 14th, was the French national holiday, also known as Bastille Day. It's a reason to celebrate all things French, and the local community right here in Vancouver joined in on the party.
Yes, and this one here, I got the chance to partake into the festivities firsthand with a colleague from Radio-Canada, Geneviève Lassalle, who showed me that French culture truly is alive and well here in Vancouver. Have a look.
Ça va faire de la pluie là, envoyer un peu d'eau là.
All right, well, happy Bastille Day, my friends. This is la Fête Nationale de la France. So this is your own coffee shop, right? Your own cafe?
I like to say it's my own, but no, my kids own it.
Really?
Yeah, because
Okay.
when they come, they eat what they want and they don't pay, right?
It's a family affair.
Yes.
It's a family affair for kids, yes.
Okay.
Quand t'as rempli tout là, attends pas la copie du monsieur, vas-y remplis.
You're helping out with the Bastille Day Festival at Yaletown. I think
Yes.
you're supplying some food. What could you remind me? What food are you bringing to the festival today?
Well, today we're gonna go a little bit on French influence, so we're gonna have the famous rillettes and cornichons.
Okay.
With rillettes, a type of croton for the Québécois, or kind of duck liver. So it sounds like awful, but it's very, very good. Faut que j'aille regarder le four, là. J'espère que ça brûle pas.
Oui.
Je dois regarder le No, we're doing the Amazing Race. This is Amazing Race Canada. Amazing Race Canada. Go. We have to deliver croissant, the next big stop.
All right, now admittedly, this was a bit of a tease because that wasn't the full and complete video. You can be able to find that online. We're going to be posting that to Facebook very soon, as well as Twitter. But the actual event that took place at the Yaletown Roundhouse, and it was an incredible event. I was so happy to see so much of a celebration for French culture.
Well, if those croissants are being served up, I'm sure.
And I can
Did you
say,
take some home?
I just, not only did I take some home, I had them there. I had more than my fair share, in fact, and they were so good. Yeah.
Thanks for bringing us some, Brad.
Yeah, sorry.
Donald Trump defends his racially charged tweets targeting a group of Democratic congresswomen. Coming up, how he's targeting them again today.
Hi, I'm Amy Bell, and here's what's in your CBC Vancouver inbox. Your favorite summer tradition is back. Musical Nooners is back for its 10th year, so grab a lunch and a friend and enjoy free concerts weekdays at noon all summer long. And join us at the Surrey Fusion Festival on July 20th to 21st at Holland Park. Swing by our tent for fun and prizes and meet CBC Vancouver's Anita Bathe and Michelle Elliott. For more on these events, check us out online.
You U.S. President Donald Trump is rejecting widespread criticism of tweets he sent out on the weekend, attacking 4 Democratic congresswomen of color.
Trump suggested they, quote, go back to their own countries. All 4 are U.S. citizens and 3 were actually born there.
As Ellen Morrow reports tonight, Trump attacked the women again today.
President Trump's appearance today was supposed to be about products made in America, but it quickly turned into another moment of stark division when President Trump again attacked a group of progressive Democratic congresswomen, accusing them of hating America.
If you hate our country, if you're not happy here, you can leave. And that's what I say all the time. That's what I said in a tweet, which I guess some people think is controversial. A lot of people love it, by the way. These are people that, in my opinion, hate our country. Now, you can say what you want, but get a list of all of the statements they've made. And all I'm saying that if they're not happy here, they can leave. They can leave, and you know what? I'm sure that there'll be many people that won't miss them.
Trump posted the tweet in question yesterday, referring to progressive Democratic congresswomen. He wrote, why don't they go back and help fix the totally broken and crime-infested places from which they came? 3 out of 4 of the women Trump is thought to have been referring to were born in the United States. The lawmaker who wasn't is now a U.S. citizen. All are women of color, and the president's language has been widely condemned as racist and xenophobic. Trump was asked today whether it concerns him that many people found his tweet to be racist, and he said no, it does not concern him because he said many people agree with him.
He relies on racism, division.
One of the lawmakers, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, hit back at President Trump, accusing him of using language that appeals to white supremacists, a criticism the president has also received in the past. Ellen Morrow, CBC News, Washington.
A 3-year-old boy has died after falling into a grease trap at a Tim Hortons restaurant in Rochester, New York.
No one ever wants to see anything like this. We're asked all the time, what's the worst thing that you encounter as a police officer, and this is number 1.
The grease trap was embedded in the ground in a grassy area outside the restaurant. Police say the trap's plastic lid, which is similar to a manhole cover, gave way and the boy fell inside. Several minutes later, someone who was helping search for the boy found him inside the trap. They pulled him out and started CPR, but it was too late and the boy did die. Police are investigating the circumstances around the death. In a statement, Tim Hortons offered condolences to his family and said it will be cooperating with authorities.
Well, millions of customers of a Quebec bank have had their personal information stolen. More than 170,000 businesses are hit too.
Legislators are scrambling to take action, while, as David Cochran tells us, some victims are already feeling the consequences.
As a clinical psychologist, Crystal Hawley protects sensitive information. She just wishes Desjardins had protected hers.
I feel really vulnerable. I don't have the time to be every day looking at every single banking detail to monitor for fraudulent activity constantly.
Desjardins says a rogue employee stole the information. Whoever got it next tried to change Hawley's address, then ran up big charges on her credit card.
Yes, they had made fraudulent purchases as well, which is what signaled the fraud team. I think there was a $1,600 purchase at Walmart, among a few others.
The sheer scope of the breach led to an emergency parliamentary hearing where even some MPs were affected.
You're mad, you're disappointed, but right now I'm focused on trying to solve the issue and protect myself further.
The breach is expansive.
People's names, addresses, dates of birth, social insurance numbers.
But the committee's power is limited.
Also, the consumer protections are provincial in this case.
Still, MPs were keen to be seen doing something, so they heard from the RCMP, which isn't even on the case.
I'm unable to speak about this particular incident.
And the president of Desjardins, who called the whole thing premature because the company is still managing the fallout and police are still investigating. But in the interim, they've offered free lifetime credit protection to Desjardins customers.
All the people who were in the list of the members that have been affected by this leak
will be taken care of with this program.
There's a data breach,
But it still leaves Crystal Hawley worried and anxious.
it gives me a little bit of comfort, but not enormous, because I had the credit protection when the fraud happened. So it didn't catch anything. It didn't do anything else. All it shows you is if something has been fraudulent. So I've called them all and asked for the highest level of fraud alert to be placed on my account. But frankly, I don't feel incredibly reassured.
And she's not alone. She's one in nearly 3 million. David Cochran, CBC News, Ottawa.
His goal? Create a perfect loaf of bread. Coming up, where a BC baker went to search for the perfect ingredients.
Renee Filipponi in for Stephen Quinn. Tuesday on the Early Edition, have you ever grabbed lunch at a food truck? The mobile restaurants have been popular here for years, but has the food truck movement started to stall? About Here columnist Yu Tae Lee will explain.
Okay, when you think of the perfect loaf of bread, you probably don't think about heading to the Arctic.
But a baker from northern BC found the authentic ingredients he was searching for to develop Arctic yeast deep in Canada's north. CBC's Mackenzie Scott explains.
We're looking for things that yeast would want to eat. So the top of these grass is perfect.
That's Kevin Hennig. He's one of thousands of tourists who will travel to Tuktoyaktuk this year. He's here with a purpose.
If we found any flowers or anything that had any kind of sugar in it, that would be absolutely amazing. Like a berry.
Hennig is a baker and owns his own bakery.
I love foraging wild foods into everything I make. Most people ask me what wild yeast is or where is it. It's not common. People don't really think about yeast. This one I got from the ground.
He lives in an isolated community in Haida Gwaii, and like Tuktoyaktuk, both communities deal with high food prices.
Anything wild I try to use. Because we're so remote, I can't buy things like even my salt. I get my salt from a salt maker on Vancouver Island.
Hennig says the process to grow wild yeast isn't difficult.
We start with the clean jar, clean bottle to collect water, and we head down, find things that are sugary, like berries. So I'm going to borrow some water that I took from a lake here, right here. And you notice all the water bottles have a hole in the top, and then I have to keep them wrapped in plastic so that they don't, so I get unique cultures in each one.
On the drive back home, he'll have at least 30 different types of yeast, and will start experimenting with them at his bakery. He says incorporating Arctic yeast into foods could also be a viable business opportunity in the north.
If you can produce the bread, yeah. And especially if you can use things that are here to help you make the bread, like the yeast or even Labrador tea, the berries. Oh, there's lots of stuff here we could use, and that's kind of what fascinates me. Is I love the idea of creating Canadian products out of exactly what we have here that's around you.
Hennig hopes to come back to the Arctic one day and bake bread with residents using Arctic yeast. Mackenzie Scott, CBC News, Tuktoyaktuk.
Smorgasbord of stuff there.
Including a lot of bugs.
Right
into the eye. Okay, Pitt Meadows was host to a Little League baseball tournament this past weekend. It's the same kind of event kids take part in every summer.
But what made today's games, or at least the weekend game, special was the man behind the plate. Our Deborah Goebel explains.
Have a good game, guys.
Right. Thanks, Larry.
Have a good game. That's it. Go, Tope.
Once a long time ago, this umpire dreamed of being a professional baseball player. Back when he was young, he had his shot at the big time.
I was signed by the Vancouver Canadians to a minor league contract way back in 55, I think it is, or 54, somewhere in there.
But he figured out early the life of a professional ball player wasn't what he wanted. Still, he never stopped loving or playing the game.
You think you'll be playing when you're old?
Probably not.
How come?
Because I'll probably be so sore and I'll be like, ugh.
At this Little League tournament, the players are shocked at how old he is.
What do you think of your 81-year-old umpire?
He's 81. Oh, I did not know that. He was good.
What they also don't know about their umpire is his famous name.
Larry Walker is the same as the baseball player, Larry Walker.
Larry Walker is probably the most famous Canadian major leaguer we ever had.
Did you know that was his dad?
I didn't know until yesterday's second game. The other team's coach told me who that was, and I was so excited.
It's fair.
40 years ago, Larry Sr. was doing exactly what these parents are doing.
I'm at all the games, make sure they're equipped and they're at their practices.
Cheering on Larry Jr. was no different.
I was coaching, and when he got to be the professional level, I was sitting home doing nothing, watching TV, because he was on TV all the time.
But sitting home doing nothing is just not in Walker's DNA.
Hey, 3!
Being an umpire helps keep him young.
We were probably doing 5, maybe 6 games a week. Depends, the schedule varies sometimes.
We includes an 18-year-old son from his second marriage that keeps him young, too.
Well, I remarried to a young lady that's been my wife now for 10 years. We've been together for 20. And she's actually younger than 3 of my other kids.
An umpire has to be agile and he has to be sharp. This isn't a job for bad backs or poor eyesight.
If you told me before he was 81, I wouldn't have believed you.
Years ago, Larry Sr. gave up on the idea of being a major league player.
Found out it wasn't really my dream because I didn't love playing it anymore.
But he never gave up on baseball.
I love doing your games. Thank you.
And he intends to keep doing them as long as the game will have him. Deborah Goebel, CBC News, Pitt Meadows.
Looking good. I love the kids' reaction. He's 81?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's looking good. And his son was a terrific baseball player. Fantastic.
And pretty special, when you play sports in this province, you don't realize, but a lot of the referees and people participating have a deep history and were maybe pretty good.
At some point, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, nice story, nice story. Okay, just a reminder, you can always find our news program online at cbc.ca/BC.
And Dan Burnt is back in studio at 11 o'clock after the National. Have a good night.
Good night.